Good evening, you're watching The Living Markets. Let's take a look at what's happening on global markets, and we start in Switzerland. Here at home, the SMI showed signs of recovery today following the recent volatility. It finished nicely in the green, up over 1.5%. And Comet Group ended in the green today, edging up just slightly. The Swiss technology firm makes parts for memory chips, flat screens and solar panels. Today they released their 2017 results. Comet saw a record year thanks to a boom in the semiconductor business in the United States. And speaking of exports, let's take a look now at the euro and Swiss franc. Earlier this year, the franc weakened. But since last week, there are fears the franc is gaining in strength thanks to market volatility. That might not be good news for Swiss companies like Comet, who bank on strong exports. Judging from the gains at the start of the week, it seems that markets have, for now at least, found their feet again following the recent sell-off. But what we want to know is how much of that sell-off was human, or are machines really to blame? Algorithmic or algo trading is now the norm among global markets, but Britain's financial regulator has already raised alarm bells over computer-driven trading. In a report today, they said, in the absence of appropriate systems and controls, the increased speed and complexity of financial markets can turn otherwise manageable errors into extreme events with potentially widespread implications. In other words, humans can resolve and react to situations more efficiently. And to what extent are computers then responsible? Here to answer that question today is Jean-Marc Guillot, who's currency expert and group treasurer at Edmond de Rothschild Swiss. He joins me now from Geneva. Thank you for joining us. Now, it's quite exciting. I mean, nice to have you there. Can you hear us? Very good.
Yes, I can hear you.
That's very good. I'll start again. Thanks for joining. But so listen, it's quite exciting times on the trading floor. And you as a trader, I mean, you prefer volatility, really, don't you?
Yes, of course, because there are more opportunities to trade on when markets are moving in.
And I mean, what do you make of the noise about these algo trading? I mean, a lot of people are saying that the volatility of late is really down to algorithmic trading. Do you believe that to be the case?
Well, at least I think what we can say is that all those robots, algorithm, platforms are clearly not the reason of the most recent correction we had in the financial markets. I would say that they are probably responsible for its depths, and it's also due to some specific market conditions we have. But we cannot see them as being the reason behind the move we just had on the market.
But algo trading does, let's say, exaggerate the trend. So, for example, if we take an event in history, let's take the January the 15th of 2015, when the SNB, the Swiss National Bank, removed the peg from the euro. I mean, markets moved so fast. So, I mean, how do you view it? I mean, how do these markets move so fast? What's behind it?
Yes, for this part, I mean, you're right in the sense that those systems are pushing the market probably to a level that we would not see if we did not have all those platforms and robots in place. As an example, because you referred to the Swiss National Bank in 2015, at that time we had quite a lot of orders into platforms, into systems. And of course, when the market is starting to move quickly and you have less liquidity in the market, and I mean by less liquidity, less prices on which you're able to trade, then all those automatic orders have to be done, whatever the price is. So the platform is continuing to sell at any cost, at any price, and that pushes the market down. And that's why we saw some prices that should not exist at all on the euro Swissy or even on the dollar Swissy during the 2015 move.
And if
I would say probably last week we had quite the same. Huh?
And if humans had been behind that, not the machines, I mean, surely it could have been corrected much faster, much quicker. How important now is the human element on the trading floor?
Well, we were, in fact, there. I mean, when I say we, I mean the humans were there also in 2015, but not exactly from the start, because, as you probably remember, it moved in something like 10 minutes, nothing more, to have the global move to the downside. But as soon as we got convinced that something was wrong, we simply shut down all the platforms we had, and we took control back with the phones and with the direct contact with the counterparts, just to avoid having those strange moves that could impact the P&L of the banks and, of course, impact as well the P&L of the clients. So humans were there, and of course, when humans take control in such very specific market conditions, I think it could be helpful to use human experience to, in a way, slow down the risk we have coming from those platforms.
To intervene. Now, Britain's financial regulator has come forward to say that safeguards aren't always properly applied across financial institutions when it comes to trading. Do you tend to agree with that?
Well, I mean, again, it's their view. I think we tend to, in a way, too much focus on those platforms and an algorithm to explain a move that we don't like because it's a market correction. But if you remember what happened in 1987, some people are already writing articles around this time to say that maybe 2018, so this year, could be comparable in some way to what happened in 1987. And even in 1987, we were already trying to blame the program systems and what were the algorithms at that time for part of the move we experienced. But it's only part of it. It's only because it's automatic. And I mean, we should probably start with what will explain the market move. And I think market moves are based on human psychology first, on human emotions. And that's why markets are moving, because we react to stress or we react to expectations. When we feel comfortable with some expectations, then you may have what we may call a smooth trend in the market. As soon as you have doubts coming or uncertainty, things change, and then you react with stress. When stress is there and you use automatic orders in platform, that's where you have some danger.
And to what extent are exchange-traded funds? I mean, they're typically traded electronically, and many are saying that the algorithms behind those may be partially responsible for these big swings that we're seeing of late as well. Could ETFs actually be problematic in the future?
Sorry. Well, ETF is, I would say ETF is like any other asset, because nowadays every single type of asset can be traded through a platform or using robots or algorithm. Could be currencies, could be stocks, could be. And last week, what we experienced, in fact, was that people had a global exposure of what we may call low volatility strategies based on quants or algorithm systems. And those systems are reacting to market behavior. As soon as the market turned a bit, all those systems decided to exit those strategies, and that meant selling heavily shares in the market automatically through the platform, whatever the price was. So it was not precisely coming from ETF, but ETFs were also part of it, yes.
So what's the solution then? Are we going to see more algo trading or less going forward, even artificial intelligence playing a role in trading? Well, artificial intelligence could be, again, I'm not a specialist of this area, so, and I'm not an engineer, but what is said is that it should replicate really a human brain. And if it is the case, then probably they should be able to learn also what we call experience. And that's what I mentioned at the beginning as a kind of a tool to reduce the impact of automatic trading through platform. So maybe one day when we reach a certain level of artificial intelligence, we may duplicate or replicate human experience, and then it could be probably better than it is today. But I think we are still quite far from such a situation nowadays. And do you worry that trust has been knocked the past days in the markets, trust being a very important factor, of course? No, I think, again, it was what we don't like is, of course, we don't like correction because some people are losing money, that's for sure. But what was quite striking is probably the depth and the quickness of the move. And for the depth and the quickness, we may blame partly all those algorithms and platform. But it remains still a correction. There are
probably several factors that are still the same as we had in 1987. Just to remember, stock prices are pretty high. We still have a risk of further rate hike with a new chairman of the Federal Reserve. And we also have algorithm. But what has changed the most, if we compare, is that we have even more algorithms, robots, and platforms than we had in 1987. So the question is, would that be a negative factor if we go again in kind of a very big correction as we experienced in 1987?
Jean-Marc Guillot, thank you very much for joining us. Now, our next guest is Dan Scott, Deputy Chief Investment Officer at Bank Vontobel. Thank you very much for joining us, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Now, what do you think? Have markets hit a bottom?
Well, it's very interesting to listen to your discussion there with Jean-Marc about trust and whether trust can be reestablished. We think that the declines that we've seen are really just part of a healthy correction because they'd overshot too much going into 2018. Up until the end of the year, we were quite comfortable. What we saw in January and February in terms of the gains, though, was too fast in too short of a space of time. So we see this as a correction. Don't know whether we'd necessarily be diving into the markets right now, but we see the retracement just as a correction, a healthy one.
OK, I want to change direction just a little bit with you while I have you here. Credit Suisse and Clarion, they're reporting this week. Now, last year, towards the end of last year, the activist investors came forward to really try and, well, basically called for Credit Suisse to break up into three parts. I mean, is this a new trend that you're seeing generally?
Pressure from activists?
Yes.
I mean, activists have been around for a long time. And again, back to this question about trust in the investment community and the way markets work. You know, I think in the 1990s, we'd have had a discussion about vulture funds and whether they can be trusted, the short-term interests of these hedge funds that are looking to break up companies. Nowadays, at Vontobel Wealth Management, we think that activist investing is very different and is not necessarily so short-termist anymore. And in fact, we believe that activists can play a very important role in making sure that management delivers a sustainable strategy, and so that their interests are aligned with the interests of shareholders and has long-term strategic goals for the company. In the end, that delivers better investment performance.
And even pension funds, which in the past traditionally keep quiet, they're rather the passive investor, actually are now wanting a voice too.
Exactly, because they're not necessarily pushing on the short-termist type things, right? If you think of the activist, just a few years ago, if I had said activist, you would have thought, okay, company breakup, cost-cutting, shaking out more dividends to the investors, or raising the buyback level. Nowadays, really, it's much more about also things like diversity, about boards diversification. It's about sustainability. It's about coming up with strategic rationale. You've seen it, for example, in companies like Nestle, where the main critique was, your board is made up of people that are from a finance background. We'd like to see some other board members, and they had to react, and now we have people like the CEO of Inditex on the board. That makes sense, and these things make sense from a strategic perspective as well.
We're even seeing the activists themselves on the board. At ABB, for example, they're really getting a voice there. Are we going to see more companies with the activist investor on the board?
I think it's inevitable. I think the activist investor, it's a style that's picking up. It's something that the end buyer of a fund likes to see, that his asset manager is actually actively involved in a discourse with management. And from the other side, it's very important that the board of directors, the supervisory board, has a discussion with management and makes sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of delivering a strategic message, because that will be the only way to defend yourself against activists or someone coming in, taking a stake and saying, we can effectively manage your company better.
And I mean, there must be some short-termists out there. There's always some rats among the mix. So how do you really, decipher what's a good call from the investors and what's not?
I think a good call would be to use the word that you just used, a mix. And it needs to be a healthy mix between short-term and long-term. There needs to be some sort of a strategic vision. And I keep using strategic. You know, it's also something that Larry Fink pointed out, one of the largest asset managers in the world, sent a letter to all of the holdings of BlackRock saying, saying you need to come and outline a plan. So there is, of course, always a focus on short term, because in the end, we like to see our earnings per share go higher. But in the end, now I think most investors have learned that you can't just do this only by cost cutting. In the long run, blind cost cutting for the sake just of cost cutting is going to crimp your earnings further down the road.
So it's a good voice, a good sounding board. But also the activist investors tend to leak information to media, for example. So things get out that perhaps wouldn't have done so without them?
I mean, I think you have different relationships between different activists and different managements. I think there are plenty of cases where the activists don't like the media, don't speak to the media, don't want a public profile, and they really want to achieve their goals behind closed doors in constructive dialogue with management. There are other cases where the activists decide they're just going to take a stake, and they're going to discuss it with management by publishing a letter. And that, of course, can be a bit disruptive. We think it's very negative if it goes into a proxy fight situation or if you have an acrimonious relationship between the activists and management. Clearly, that's a short-term negative. It's much better if the two sides convene, but it takes as much of a step forward from management and from the board as it does from the activists.
And tell me about regulation in Switzerland. How far can the activists go in terms of threatening the board or making calls? I mean, do they have anything, in terms of what they can actually do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the regulatory backdrop is fairly clear. They're limited to the same, they have the same limitations as the rest of shareholders do. And so, as long as you don't have a situation where you have different voting classes of shares that can be used as a defense mechanism, you're in a situation where there are legitimate shareholders. And so if they have enough of a stake, they're able to suggest people to the board or raise motions at the annual general meeting to use the normal channels that actually institutional shareholders, all of them, not just activists, should be taking use of, or should be making use of, and fulfilling their
actual power. They don't really actually have any power, though, as such.
It depends on the size of the stake. The larger the stake, the more influence they can exert.
Lovely, Dan Scott. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Well, coming up after the break, the cold and wind are causing disruptions at the Olympics, but nothing is standing in the way of Swiss medal hopes in curling. We'll have the latest Olympics news with Matt Layton later on the programme. Stay where you are. I apologise, we've got a little bit more.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNNMoney Switzerland.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Oh,
Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNNMoney.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. exploring not just what's going on, but why. I just want to press you on one further point. Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
For somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously.
You're watching the Living Markets here on the Swiss Pulse. Time now for some sports news. Entering into day 4 of the Olympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea. And the stiff wind is not letting up. Several events have been affected, including the women's giant slalom, which had to be postponed to Thursday. Amanda Davies has more from Pyeongchang, South Korea.
It is all about the wind here today. Once again, we knew it was scheduled to pick up. There's gusts approaching 40 kilometres an hour down here at our Olympic studio, but that is up to about 75 kilometres an hour up at the Alpine Centre. And for the second time in 2 days, the ski racing events have been cancelled. After the men's downhill yesterday, it's been the turn of the women's giant slalom to fall foul today. That means the highly anticipated start of Michaela Schifrin's Olympic campaign has been delayed. The 22-year-old American's expected to be one of the stars of these games and was scheduled to be competing in the first of her 5 events. But she's described the delay as a bummer, but says she's feeling good and will continue to train towards the race day. The women's snowboard slopestyle has gone ahead, but that has left some commentators asking big questions of the organiser after the majority of riders suffered falls. After qualifying was cancelled on Sunday, it went straight to the final shootout this morning, with just 5 of the 25 riders making it to the end of their first run without a fall. And in the end, it was the defending champion from the United States, Jamie Anderson, who took gold. She wasn't unaffected by the wind, though. Her winning score significantly lower than the 95.25, which won her gold in Sochi 4 years ago. And we knew that Canada had a good figure skating lineup heading into the Games. They have proved it, going one better than Sochi to take victory in the team event. That's their first gold of the Games.
And joining me now live here in the studio to tell us more about the latest Olympics news is sports correspondent Matt Layton. And Matt, these athletes, are they behaving like wusses, or is it really that bad when it comes to the weather there?
It's the cream is rising to the top. So the top athletes are winning the events. So sort of answering your question, it's incredibly difficult. It's very cold. There's a very strong wind and it's not consistent. Say, for example, we had the women's slope-style snowboard. You go down some rails, then you go over 3 big jumps. The first 8 competitors in that today, they fell over because the winds were coming from behind and they'd stop them. They'd go around, so it's very dangerous. However, the actual winners, Jamie Anderson from America, she won in Sochi. The second place is a world champion. The third place was a second in Sochi. So it is incredibly difficult, but what the experienced athletes are saying is it's difficult, but you don't do your amazing trick, you do your steady trick. And perhaps that's where experience comes into it. But clearly, as we saw on the report a minute ago, the women's giant slalom was cancelled, and we saw some images before where it's ridiculous. You couldn't even stand up. So you have to look at television rights, you have to look at all sorts of issues. The way it actually works for an event is the technical delegate of the federation involved is the person responsible for making the decision. Him or she, they actually go and look at the conditions, clearly lots of experience, then they speak to the IOC, they speak to the management of the federation, they speak to the broadcasters, but it's the actual delegate who makes the decision. And so far, maybe the fact that it was a snowboard event and not the men's downhill, it was cancelled. So far we have the men's downhill on Thursday and we have the women's giant slalom on Thursday. In the winter sports, there are 2 or 3 days always set aside. Historically, they've often had to use them.
Sounds like they are using them. But the curling team, it's a mixed team from Switzerland, sure to pick up a medal tomorrow, and it will be the first Swiss medal. I'm not hearing of any others so far.
So far, there's been 54 medals given out in 18 different disciplines, and Switzerland hasn't done anything. Switzerland's not doing badly, and they're not really expected to do that much in the early days. Dario Colonia, he was 6th. Last time he won a gold medal. Natalie von Siebelten, she was 6th. And we just had today Benjamin Vega in the biathlon, he was 6th. So they're doing OK, but not really where they should be going. But yeah, it's an interesting situation, this, with the mixed curling. It's the first time ever in the Olympics. If you watch one event, you watch the final mixed curling tomorrow. I'll tell you why. Jenny Perret and Martin Rios from Switzerland, they used to go out together. They're not anymore. The reason it's interesting is they're having domestics actually during the competition. You could see them today, and she was going, "No, you silly thing, you push harder." And he was saying, "Just shut up and let me get on with it." And it's absolutely fascinating. Today they came through against Russia. In the last end, they managed to do just amazing things. Yesterday they beat, they're winning most of their matches, but tomorrow it's against Canada. Canada, in the round-robin events, they beat Switzerland 7-2. Canada have an 80% success rate. If you want to put the stone there, 8 out of 10 they do it. Switzerland have a 71% success rate. So Canada are the favourites, but Switzerland the world champions, and Switzerland 5 times in the last 6 Olympic Games, when there's been a new event, they've won a gold.
I'm glad we can rely on you to bring us the gossip from the Games.
Absolutely.
But just lastly, I mean, South Korea's, what, 8 hours ahead of Switzerland? Anything I should be setting my alarm clock in the middle of the night for to watch?
Sort of.
Not very convincing.
No, I'll tell you why. It's because they have planned to do the men's combined event, a downhill and a slalom. It's set for about 3 o'clock in the morning. So ideally, I'd say normally, yes, certainly do it. However, so far, the weather forecast is not great, and the downhill has already been cancelled. So that's, if it is on, maybe set for a second, watch it. The other events tomorrow, not really that much action involving Switzerland. Obviously, we've mentioned the mixed curling. There's going to be some cross-country sprinting event going on, and there's going to be, look at my notes here. There's a wrong page. Can I fill it? There's various other events going on. I say the cross-country. There's the women's snowboard, half-pipe going on, and there's some speed skating, and there's some short stack skating as well. So I think there's going to be 8 finals tomorrow. Switzerland are going to have a medal because in the mixed curling, it's the silver and gold match. In the rest, they probably just have to watch.
I'll get some shut-eye then. Thank you very much, man. Thank you. Well, it's over to our international desk now. The Golan Heights, the high plateau between Syria, Israel and Lebanon, regarded by the international community as Israeli-occupied territory, is a historically strategic area that draws thousands of tourists. Tensions were raised here this weekend after Syrian air defences brought down an Israeli fighter jet. CNN reporter Ian Lee is at the Golan Heights and talks to visitors there days after the most significant clash between Israel and Syria in decades.
Military hardware litters the Golan Heights. Deadly reminders of Israel's last 2 wars with Syria. In 1967, it was captured by Israeli forces. Ever since, the international community has regarded this high plateau between Syria, Israel, and Lebanon as Israel-occupied territory. War erupted once again in 1973. Thousands of Syrians and hundreds of Israelis died amid the barbed wire. This area has always held strategic importance. In ancient times, it was the crossroads of the Via Maris from the Mediterranean and the King's Highway from the Red Sea, both going to Damascus. Nowadays, those roads are gone, but it still holds that importance, with Lebanon visible to my right and Syria to my left. These days, it's the cameras doing the shooting here. The nature, the history, and proximity to danger draws thousands of tourists.
And where you see the trees in the far distance there, these trees there, they are in Syria.
The UN monitors, tasked to keep the peace, have also become part of the attraction.
Stephen Hillary, New Zealand. California.
A jolt from the past struck the Golan last Saturday. Israel and Syria engaged in their most significant clashes in decades. Syrian air defenses brought down an Israeli jet fighter on a retaliation mission after an Iranian drone, launched from Syria, was shot down over Israel. But even that couldn't dissuade tourists.
I feel safe. I believe the Israeli army is going to take care of us here. I live in Israel, live in Jerusalem now.
It's not what I expected. And I'm glad we have UN people here, and it seems very safe. So
A sense of security Israel hopes remains. A day later, and tensions seem to have eased. No one here, perhaps, desperate for a fight. But all are aware of the possible dangers if the ghosts of the past catch up to the present. Ian Lee, CNN in the Golan Heights.
He's been voted the best DJ in the world. French house DJ and producer David Guetta sells millions of albums each year and fills stadiums from France and Switzerland to Brazil and the US, and has become one of the highest paid DJs globally. He's collaborated with some of the hottest pop stars on the planet, including Rihanna, Nicki Minaj and Kelly Rowland, just to name a few. My colleague Martina Fuchs asked him at his recent concert in Zurich about what it takes to reach the top, how to stay successful, and whether online streaming is a blessing or a curse for him.
David, your first album, Just a Little More Love, was released in 2002. Still, you're filling stadiums. How did you manage to stay so successful?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm trying to challenge myself, to stay passionate, try to surprise people, you know? But yes, of course, it's a little crazy to think that I've been around for so long and I can still do an arena tour like this, because I'm impressed by the tour. It's going really, really well.
You've worked with artists like Justin Bieber on To You, with Usher on Without You. Who else do you want to work with in the future?
I'm very open, actually, you know, because people know me for collaboration with superstars, but I'm totally open to work with anyone talented. And actually, a dream is when you discover someone that is not so famous yet, but is very talented. When this happened when we did Titanium with Sia, and she was not the big star she is now. And of course, this is incredible.
You are one of the most successful DJs, if not the most successful DJ in the world, and have sold millions of albums. What does commercial success mean to you?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question because I come from underground. When I started to play house music, it was an underground movement. But my desire was always to share my passion with more people. So I was always, you know, trying to make our music the biggest movement on the planet. And we were very small at the beginning, but we became, you know, as big as hip hop or pop or, you know, rock. And yes, commercial success means a lot to me. Because I think at some point, you know, no musical movement can stay always at the same level. It's a natural evolution. You start with like small underground shows, and then the music becomes cool and trendy, and then the next step is to have commercial success. This is a natural progression.
You have performed around the world, in Brazil, in Switzerland, in Asia, everywhere. What keeps you going? What inspires you every day to mobilize these crowds?
Well, my motivation, even to make music, is what I'm doing tonight. Is really to be on stage. I don't know how to explain it, but like when I play a record for the first time, it's such a rush of adrenaline, you know. When I hear the people singing my songs for the first time, it's incredible. And this is what keeps me going on tour, because it's addicting. Because of course, you know, I give a lot of love, I receive so much too. And also, you know, the fact that when I'm going to the studio, I'm imagining, oh, when I'm gonna play this record, people are gonna scream, you know, it keeps me working hard.
And what is your success recipe? What are some of the ingredients that you use?
Well, the success, I think, is essentially due to work. Because I think talent is a little bit overrated, to be honest.
Are you a workaholic?
I work a lot, yeah. And I've been working for many, many years, so I'm building something. And of course, you know, I have a certain technical understanding. I have a certain vision, but I work a lot. That's the main thing.
What do you think about the music streaming business like Spotify? Does it help or hurt you financially?
Oh no, the streaming is the absolute perfect model. It's very interesting how technology is always evolving, and anybody that is trying to fight technology is always gonna fail. And you know, when there was all the problems with piracy and everybody was losing money because the record companies, they were trying to fight piracy instead of supporting streaming, that was the answer. Because, you know, people are not dishonest. They just want something that works and is practical. So when it was easier to get music illegally than legally, of course, they're gonna go for illegal. But now, Spotify, it's amazing. It's like giving you like all the music in the world, making you discover new music, and it's also extremely easy to use. And that's why it's working. And actually, the record companies and the producers are making money again thanks to streaming.
But for you as a DJ superstar, I guess the live events still make more money for you than the music streaming.
Every artist is actually making money by touring now. This is the main income. But I think it's just important to be in a healthy economic system, you know, and I'm not necessarily speaking only about me, I'm speaking about the labels, the producers, of course the artists, the publishers, but the fact that the music business is now a healthy business, this is good for everyone.
David, you're also a songwriter, you're a music producer and a remixer. What's next for you in the professional pipeline? What's your next plan?
Well, I'm working on a new album. Hopefully it will come out. I have a new record coming out very soon as a producer for Sean Paul. And that's gonna come very, very soon. And as an artist in March, I have a big record coming too. So yeah, life is beautiful. I'm touring, it's a lot of fun. It's good.
The record label industry has transformed dramatically over the last couple of years with new technology. What kind of trends are you seeing right now?
Do you mean like...
In music production, we have so many new mixers and, you know, new technology. How will this shape the future of your business?
What is interesting, if you're talking about creation of the music or you're talking about distribution?
Creation of the music.
Okay, when it comes to the creation of the music, what's interesting is every time there's been a new musical genre, it was thanks to technology. People don't necessarily realize this, but you know, the evolution from clavecin to piano completely changed classical music. And then if there would be no electric guitar, there would be no rock and roll probably. And then maybe if there would be no sampler, there would be no hip hop. And then the laptops allowed kids to make music in their bedrooms. And this is how EDM could exist. So I'm waiting for the next technology that is going to allow a new musical movement. But it's not there yet, but it's gonna come for sure.
Does this mean that the art form of DJ is not dead? Do you think there will be a constant revival?
Well, music is always gonna be alive, and we DJing and producing are two different things, even if usually famous DJs are producers. But for the creation of music, there's always going to be new technology. And what's interesting in the moment is that the technology is affordable. And this is the big change, is that before, the technology to produce music was extremely expensive. So it was only the chosen ones that could access the studios. Whereas now, anyone can make music in his bedroom, and I'm talking about professional quality. So most of the records that you hear tonight have been produced in home studios. So, you know, this allows everyone that is a little bit creative to make music.
What is the most important equipment that you're using at this point?
Well, it's still the same. Ableton Live or Logic Audio, and then lots of plugins. But let's say that if you picture probably what you've seen pictures of, you know, a guy with a huge desk with millions of buttons and compressors, reverbs, delays, like all this material that you see in the big expensive studios. Now you have all of this in a laptop in the form of plugins. And you know, honestly, it's very, very, very hard to tell the difference between the real hardware material and the laptop. So, you know, this is life-changing for all the kids.
Last question, David. What is your dream for the future?
My dream for the future, for myself or for the music?
For yourself.
For myself. I just hope that I can always be passionate like this, you know, because what I do when you get on stage, if you don't do it with your heart, it's very painful. And you know, I'm like everybody. Sometimes I'm sick, sometimes I'm tired, and of course then I still go on stage, and it's a little more, it's hard. But I just hope that, you know, I keep the love for the music so I can share it with more people.
Good luck, David. Nice meeting you. Thank you so much.
And the love of music is still the theme. It's featuring in our big picture this evening with Martina. Martina, can you give us any hints what you're going to be discussing?
Amanda. It's not a dull Monday for sure, given that on Friday we had the Swiss Music Awards 2018, and the 18-year-old Nemo, he won 4 prizes in different categories. So this basically gave us a really nice news pack to start the week with, and we're going to focus on the streaming business of music here in Switzerland.
Everything must be online now, surely.
Absolutely. So we saw a sharp drop in CD sales, and for Swiss artists it's really tough nowadays to make money. So they have to tour more, live gigs, shows, basically generate their main income nowadays. And we also saw a really sharp decline in downloading. So we will have different guests, including the IFPI Managing Director for Switzerland, which represents the labels here, to talk about this issue and how to support the local artists as well, because it's important to really help the musicians, you know, not just to really show their talent, but also their pockets.
David Guetta made some nice comments, I thought. One saying that he had to work very hard, and it's not necessarily talent that shines through, but really working hard and putting the effort in.
And when you look at the crowds that he's attracting for every gig, right? Here at the Hallenstadion a couple of days ago, I mean, he was filling, you know, the stadiums and attracting so many crowds. But it's really the streaming of music that is the future.
And it's really great to just find out about all sorts of music.
And how are you listening to music, Amanda?
Definitely online, and I agree with David. I search and find new music that I didn't even know existed before, and I find I like it quite often. But thanks, Martina. We're looking forward to it.
You're on the right track.
That's it from me on the Living Markets. I'll be back at 8 p.m. We are live across Switzerland until 9 p.m. I'll have our newsmaker at 8 o'clock. And do catch up with us on our website, CNNMoney.ch. We have lots of content there and any interviews that you may have missed. So thank you and see you again soon.
CNN Money Switzerland weather. We start with the webcam of the day. Here is an overview of the values recorded in the last hours. And now, the radar animation of the last 90 minutes. Let's have a look to the forecast for this afternoon. And for tomorrow. Here is an overview for the next days in German-speaking Switzerland. In western Switzerland. And south of the Alps. Thanks for following us.
Do we have...
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNNMoney Switzerland.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Yeah. Oh,
Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNNMoney.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
They are like the Grammys of Switzerland. The Swiss Music Awards brought a touch of glamour to Zurich on Friday. But now the party's over. What is the outlook for the music industry? Concerts are making money, but is touring the only way to turn a profit these days? We tune into the topic on the big picture. Lorenz Haas is Managing Director of IFPI Switzerland and tells us that cracking the digital market is key.
We've seen this since the introduction of streaming about 5, 6, 7 years ago. CD is on a decline for 15, almost 20 years. Digital download was an in-between story, but it's on the decline as well. So streaming is definitely the future.
And in the Newsmaker tonight, we'll have the head of one of Switzerland's most prestigious music events. Mathieu Jaton, the manager of the Montreux Jazz Festival, tells us that the success of the festival is all down to satisfying the artist.
How to welcome people, how to let the artists be free of doing whatever they want and giving them a lot of comfort to relax. They will provide them the chance to give a beautiful concert because they just feel relaxed and comfortable, and that's my goal every day.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Martina Fuchs. Let's get started. Good evening. Let's take a look now at the main stories this evening. Swiss pharma giant Novartis is facing corruption charges in Greece. Two former prime ministers, the central bank governor and an EU commissioner for home affairs are among those named in a leaked government report. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras vows to claim back billions of euros from Novartis, calling on the Greek parliament to investigate bribes allegedly paid to prominent politicians. In a statement, Novartis claims to be aware of the reports but declined to comment further. The Basel-based company said the reports appear to be driven by a leak of parts of a confidential and preliminary investigation. Switzerland's Federal Office of Justice confirmed last week it has received 2 requests for legal assistance from Greece and the United States. The head of Swiss Post, Susanne Ruoff, has refused to step down for mistakes she admits were made by the Postbus subsidiary company. Ruoff, who has been CEO since 2012, says she only discovered last November that payment transfers carried out by the bus company, which is financed by public funds, were in fact illegal. An audit showed that Postbus intentionally kept profits low in order to receive more governmental subsidies, in excess of nearly 80 million Swiss francs. The Post CEO has promised to carry out a thorough investigation. Both the Postbus director and chief finance officer were dismissed, and Postbus must now refund the money. Russian investigators say they have recovered both flight recorders from a plane that crashed near Moscow on Sunday. The plane had just taken off from Moscow for the city of Orsk when it disappeared from radar. State-run media said the pilots didn't report any problems before the crash. A spokeswoman for the Orsk city administration, Yelena Abramova, told Interfax that one of the passengers was a Swiss citizen. CNN international correspondent Fred Pleitgen has this report from the crash site.
Russian search and recovery crews have made a lot of headway since the plane went down in the afternoon hours of Sunday. They say that so far they've recovered both the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. And as far as the cockpit voice recorder is concerned, they say that it is in what they call satisfactory condition, which means that they hope that they will be able to get some very valuable information from that device and the other one as well. Now, of course, they're saying they want to find out as fast as possible what exactly happened to that plane. Apparently, there are still 600 people working in the debris field trying to find extra clues. The Russians have also widened the search area and are now using helicopters to see if they can discover any more plane parts or anything else that would offer any sort of clues as to what happened to that plane. As far as the theories are concerned, the authorities are saying that they're still looking at possible mechanical failure, pilot error, and also have not ruled out the weather as a factor as well. There were, of course, some pretty heavy snowstorms during the time that this plane came down in the afternoon hours of Sunday. However, we also do have to say that there were also other planes that were taking off and landing at the same time. And one of the other things that the Russians have said is that, of course, despite the fact that these efforts here are ongoing, the most important thing for them right now is helping and comforting and supporting the families of the victims who were on that plane. Fred Pleitgen at the Moscow region, Russia.
To happier news now, and Kensington Palace announced new details about the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markel. A statement released Monday revealed the couple will marry midday on May the 19th in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. The palace also said the couple will undertake a carriage procession through the town of Windsor after taking their vows and will hold their wedding reception in Windsor Castle. And coming up after the break, we take a look at some of the challenges faced in the music industry here on The Big Picture. Stay tuned.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have, it's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour!
News programs are usually full of short stories that barely go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture every weekday evening at 7 p.m. The Big Picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests that take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The Big Picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
It's high energy and fast-paced, so buckle up as Front Seat brings you the latest news and views from the automotive world. Car developments, industry news, interviews with successful drivers, the latest trends and next-level innovation here in Switzerland and around the world. On Front Seat, we'll keep you on the right road.
Front Seat with Hannah Wise on CNN Money Switzerland.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
And getting a bit of Monday feeling after a good party at the weekend is not uncommon. Certainly, the Swiss music industry had plenty to celebrate on Friday. It was the Swiss Music Awards, which took place in Zurich. Amongst the biggest winner was rapper Nemo. The 18-year-old who sings in Swiss German won in 4 categories that included Best Male Solo Act and Best Live Act. But whilst there was plenty to celebrate, the fact remains that the music industry is facing huge challenges. Let's take a look. Concert tickets sales are still hitting the right notes by making healthy profits. That's compared to record sales, as you can see right here. Let's take a look now at some of the revenues of the music industry in Switzerland. The red line here shows that the Swiss concert promoters are actually improving in terms of revenues, the sales of the Swiss Records Association. We can see that in 2016, revenues for the Swiss concert promoters reached almost 350 million Swiss francs. But the revenues from record sales dropped to 84.6 million Swiss francs. Now, if we look at the digital market, there's also a battle for business going on. Some fans are tuning out when it comes to downloading and turning up the volume when it comes to music streamers such as Spotify. The blue line here is downloads, which have been falling sharply to some 22 million Swiss francs. Now, the line here is 23 million, the yellow line here, which is the streaming, so you can see it's going up. And this line here, the green one, at 45 million Swiss francs, represents the total revenues for the digital market in Swiss francs, 45 million. So what does all this mean for musicians? Is touring and giving away music the best route to success? And what does this mean for music lovers like you and I? Well, Lorenz Haas is managing director of IFPI Switzerland and told me earlier that the digital market is key.
Yes, I think we will see this trend for a couple of years going on. We've seen this since the introduction of streaming about 5, 6, 7 years ago. CD is on a decline for 15, almost 20 years. Digital download was an in-between story, but it's on the decline as well. So streaming is definitely the future.
And streaming business generated an income of some 23 million Swiss francs in 2016. Now, how is all of that impacting the musicians here in Switzerland?
Well, streaming is a totally different economy. It's functioning, everything is totally different. The consumption behavior is different. So it really it is a huge challenge for both record labels and artists, and it takes us to, it's imperative that we rethink the way how we do our business.
Still, it's the record labels rather than the artists who make some money. That's why IFPI also, has put some pressure on Spotify. And actually now Swiss artists can also stream their music on dedicated platforms like Top Hits Schweiz or New Music Friday Schweiz, Schweiz Rap, etc. How is this developing?
Well, it's important that you gain access to the playlists of the major streaming providers. Until very few months ago, it was virtually impossible to find a Swiss artist in those playlists. But given that streaming business is very much playlist-driven, it is imperative to gain access to those playlists.
Now, for the labels, obviously the non-licensed offers are a big problem as well, the so-called stream rippers. Now, according to your website, some 40% of consumers actually listen to music via unlicensed offers. How much of a problem is this creating?
I think the major effect of unlicensed music platforms or piracy platforms is that it is constantly devaluating the music, and it's devaluating the legitimate market.
Now, has music become too cheap for consumers and for artists, therefore, to make money?
Well, from the consumer side, it's fantastic. You have those like 13 Swiss francs a month for a subscription. But yes, indeed, the music market has lost 3/4 of its revenue in the last 15, 20 years. So this money is really, we're short of money in this respect, yes.
Now, a lot of Swiss bands and musicians, for example, Lo and Le Duc, they have offered albums for free just to create a buzz, but they don't actually make any money. So who is benefiting from all of this in the end? Because money is being made somewhere.
No, I think they said for free, but they're on the subscription services, so they make the money. Maybe it's a little bit more promotional trick to call it music for free. Well, who's making the money? I think looking at the streaming economy, I think the big stars are making more money because they dominate the playlists. US repertoire is making big money. They dominate the playlists. And the long tail, those artists who have not been in the focus of consumers, they do better than they did before. Each one of them not very much, but as a sum, they have become a big factor. Where the money is missing is the middle class bands. And I'd say that Swiss artists, Swiss featured artists, are normally a part of this middle class I'm referring to.
Now, can you give some examples, and how are they actually making money? Is it just with live gigs and concerts around Switzerland?
It has become the key to income to make as many shows as you can as a musician. Many managements and musicians today see the recordings just as a promotional tool to make themselves well known and to be invited for the gigs around the country. The situation for the labels, however, is what do? They don't earn more money than the artists do, but they've been in a better position when they have a back catalog or a large roster of musicians, so they can work with the sum of products they have.
Now, I read somewhere that in Switzerland, the labels and musicians likewise, with the streaming of music, they only make about 0.01 Swiss francs in terms of revenues. Would you agree with this estimate?
Well, per play, yes. It's about 1 Swiss cent per play, a little bit more on the retail side. But of course, the streaming service is taking its share. The artists, the songwriters take their share via Suiza in Switzerland, and the rest goes to the record labels and the artists who split their share and have to deduct the promotional costs. Yes, 1 cent per click is not much money, it's a micropayment, but I think we should not stare too much on this small figure of a micropayment. When you see a top artist can make 100 plays a week alone in Switzerland, and so there's the opportunity.
So who makes more money in this equation? Is it the labels or the musicians in the end?
Oh, it's the same. The shares of the musicians have not changed. They're the same like in the download era. I think there's not a gap between the record labels and the artists. I think as a Swiss music industry, we have the problem, or we have the challenge in front of us to be part of those plays, because this is where the money goes.
Now, big stars like Taylor Swift or Coldplay, they have actually boycotted streaming platforms like Spotify. What would you advise? I know you're a label guy, but what would you advise the musicians here in Switzerland to do to make a living in the end?
Look, when those superstars do something like a boycott, be careful, because very often it's a promotional trick. And they know they get a lot of attention for doing so. As a Swiss artist, you will not get much attention by boycotting streaming platforms. No, actually, you can make your money on streaming platforms. You just have to rethink the way you are promoting your music and yourself.
How should they do that? Can you give a piece of advice here?
I think the streaming era is an era of non-stop promotion. It involves social media activity. You have to motivate your fans to listen over and over again to your songs. This is very different from the CD and download era, when you had to make one transaction and the revenue is done.
But are the Swiss artists actually ready for this time?
We will see. I think young top musician Nemo, he certainly is ready.
He was the big winner of the Swiss Music Awards that happened on Friday.
Yeah,
so do you think he's kind of a pioneer when it comes to this?
Yes, he's very smart. He has a very smart manager, Martin Geiser. He has who's also his recording label with background music. Yes, they are very fit for the streaming age, but we also have to see that the consumers on the streaming services are exactly Nemo's target group. They're young, they're urban, pretty urban, and this is where the music, this is how the music consumers are today.
But isn't actually the money still with the elderly people, the older generation that still wants to buy records and now more again vinyl as well?
Yes, the CD isn't dead at all. We've seen that the CD has always been, until today, the strongest source of revenue. Now this year, or in 2017, maybe already streaming made more revenue than the CDs, but it's just a matter of time when this will change, when streaming will be #1.
Now, let us think long-term, Mr. Haas. How can we strike a balance between the labels, the artists, and the consumers, you know, in the end? What kind of business model should there be for the record label industry in Switzerland?
I think the record labels have to rethink the way they're signing the artists, which artists they're signing. They have to watch more closely who's using streaming services. I think it's not a coincidence that Swiss rap music, Swiss hip-hop, is really a good source of revenue, is doing pretty well in the streaming environment, for example.
Now, you yourself, you have been critical when it comes to YouTube, for example,
yes.
Which is the largest, you know, on-demand streaming site, obviously. Now, every month, some 76% of users stream music from there. What problem is this creating for the labels here in Switzerland?
Well, until last year, more money was made for the industry with the sale of vinyl than the sale of than the income from YouTube. So that's just about 5% of the whole revenue. But you said it, the consumption of music via YouTube is overwhelming, and there's a big problem. The problem is that the labels are unable to make agreements with YouTube. YouTube is taking the position that they're only a digital platform where the users are uploading the music. So it's the users who need a license and not YouTube in their logic, in their narrative. So I think there's a need for much more talking with YouTube on this.
Here in Switzerland, we have certain cantonal governments and municipalities that offer support for young artists and musicians, and also organizations like the Mikrokulturprozent or Pro Helvetia. What kind of further support should there be for young artists?
It's very important that the streaming platforms are in touch with the labels and the artists in Switzerland. They've ignored us. Some of them have ignored us for too long and did not have this interaction with us. And I really hope that this is getting better right now.
Now, IFPI is going to release a new report for Switzerland also this coming March. Can you shed some light on the key trends already with us?
Yes, maybe we'll see it in the definite figures. Maybe the streaming has become the #1 source of revenue already in 2017. But as I said before, it's just a matter of time when it comes. I think vinyl, talking about vinyl, at about 5% of the market, I think it has about reached its full potential. I don't think that there will be much more higher rise there. And download is on the decline after its best year in 2012.
And before we go, Mr. Haas, how do you listen to music?
I mostly use, I listen to my music on Apple Music, but I could also use Spotify, I could use Deezer, I could use Google Play, of course. But
no more CD, no more vinyl?
No, I haven't bought a CD for like 4 or 5 years, I think, yes. I'm a streaming guy. Or just
go to a good live show as well. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Haas.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Plenty more to talk about on the topic of the music industry. Later in the big picture, we will be hearing from a Swiss music journalist based in London. He will be telling us a bit more about the music scene here and abroad. But first, your weather forecast.
CNNMoney Switzerland weather. We start with the webcam of the day. Here is an overview of the values recorded in the last hours. And now the radar animation of the last 90 minutes. Let's have a look to the forecast for this afternoon. And for tomorrow. Here is an overview for the next days in German-speaking Switzerland. In western Switzerland. And south of the Alps. Thanks for following us.
Try to be global and we try to be smart. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria GPS.
Only from CNNMoney Switzerland.
What drives Swiss leaders? What is the secret to their success? In The Newsmaker, we speak to successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, politicians, decision makers, opinion leaders, sports, and entertainment personalities. We find out what makes them tick in a special long-form interview that gets to the heart of who they are and where they are going. So pull up a chair and join us for The Newsmaker every weekday evening from 8 p.m. on CNN Money Switzerland.
Somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously, and it's not something you can just parachute in and ask somebody to open their heart to you. To peel away the layers to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about.
France will never give up against the terrorists.
And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice.
Thank you.
You have to show yourself to them.
So right now they're hovering pretty low over this area that's extensively flooded.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
Only from CNNMoney Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What drives the Swiss business world? What makes the economy tick? And how do companies react to the ever-changing challenges of the market? We've got our finger on the Swiss pulse. Well, we'll bring you the ups and downs, bulls and bears of the world of business, always asking what it means for you. The Swiss Pulse, weekdays from 6 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV, on our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. The best Swiss business news whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
Let's return now to our big picture topic tonight, and we are putting the music industry in the spotlight. And so far, streaming is proving a big hit with consumers. Industry experts say that for now at least, in terms of the digital market, downloading is losing ground. So what do musicians think? Well, for big stars like David Guetta, it is proving an effective way to reach the crowds. Take a listen.
Spotify, it's amazing. It's like giving you like all the music in the world, making you discover new music, and it's also extremely easy to use. And that's why it's working. And actually, the record companies and the producers are making money again thanks to streaming.
But for musicians who are up and coming, commercial success can be hard to achieve. Pop music band Baba Shrimps made Hurry Hurry track, which is Switzerland's official song during the Olympic Games in South Korea. They told us that talent doesn't always equal financial profit.
I guess it's difficult, yeah, but it's, I think it's in comparison with like being just having your own business. It's more or less like just running your own business and not working at a super huge company and not having certain kind of structures. It's more kind of everything is free and we need to be creative, but we also need to kind of talk about business aspects and kind of what our aims are and what we're going to do and what we don't want to do. And so it's just like running your own company in a way, which is kind of the backbone of the creative part of being a band.
To get more insight now, we are crossing live to someone who's seen it all in the world of music. Hans-Peter Künzler is a Swiss freelance music journalist and is now joining us live from London. Hans-Peter, great to have you on the show. Now, you have been a music journalist for some 30 years and seen the music business change dramatically over the decades. How is online streaming changing the landscape in the UK?
One of the biggest changes over the last decades has been the loss of large record companies losing power over music in general, and the whole thing becoming much more fragmented. At the same time, of course, there's a lot more music around now than ever before. This means that there's more room for innovation, but it's also much more difficult to actually get heard because you need to break out of a big mass of music that hits you everywhere where you go. That is the biggest problem at the moment that musicians face, apart from, of course, making a living from their music. And CDs are no longer really the way to do so. So they have to look for different ways of making money. I'm not sure streaming is quite the solution yet, but that's not because streaming is a bad idea. On the contrary, it's a fantastic idea. But at the moment, the income streams are so loaded in favor of the distributor, Spotify themselves and others, as opposed to the creators of content. I think that really needs to change to keep music as a creative force alive.
Now, how are musicians coping in this new age of Spotify? What kind of options do they have on the table?
Well, there's a big difference between Swiss musicians and British musicians in that. Switzerland is a small market. It is a small scene. Music hasn't quite the place in everyday life that it has in the UK, for instance. I mean, in the UK, every great grandmother knows who bands like Oasis or Prodigy are. In Switzerland, this is not so. Pop music in particular isn't ingrained in the Swiss psyche. So it's a smaller market and it is a smaller infrastructure. Of course, in the UK, music is absolutely everywhere, and musicians in the UK have many more different ways of actually coping with the dropping away of CD sales. It's a matter of imagination. You have to find all sorts of different ways of making money. And in the UK, people are doing that by, for instance, becoming disc jockeys. It's a really well-paid job. Or they do different merchandise. Or syncs have become really important, where your sync agent finds way to use your money on adverts internationally or even in computer games. All that sort of stuff, web, the internet stuff, social media. British musicians are really, really adept at finding ways of earning money like that, apart from concerts, of course. And I think it's a generational thing as well. Musicians who are in their 40s, 50s, maybe didn't quite trust the new technology. They may be struggling. But whenever I talk to young musicians, 20-year-olds, 25, 30-year-olds, they've never known a business where CDs make a lot of money. They've all found completely different ways, and they don't moan about anything that's going on at the moment.
It's all about being creative in the end, isn't it? Now, musicians in Switzerland, talking about CDs, are hardly able, Hans-Peter, to make money with the sales of CDs anymore. They largely make money with live gigs and concerts. What's the situation like in London, one of the world's music capitals?
Well, it's a pretty similar situation. I mean, live gigs have become much, much more important again than they were, say, 10, 20 years ago. And I know there's a lot of talk about lots of venues disappearing in London in particular. There's even, I think, a council office that is concerns itself with trying to protect venues like that. The thing is, it's just a shift. It's a new generation. Venues like the sticky old pubs where you're stuck to the floor and you couldn't go to the toilet for fear of being sick. Those sort of places are disappearing. It's a new generation of music fans. They want to be treated in a different way. People adjust like that. But as I mentioned before, things like merchandise and DJing and creating videos, creating content for videos, making computer games, all sorts of ways British musicians have found. But of course, Swiss musicians in streaming have a completely different opportunity. The Swiss market is so small, again, as I said before. It's very difficult to find enough of an audience in Switzerland. That has always been the problem of Swiss bands, Swiss artists. In the past, a lot of them have just tried to ape whatever trend was going on elsewhere, and they were always 2 steps behind. They always were boring. They never got anywhere. Now, with streaming, Swiss artists can reach the world, basically, and quite a few of them have done so really successfully. I'm thinking of the people from Mouthwatering Records in Bern, a group like Tim, Puma, Mimi. They're extremely successful worldwide, or a Bernese band called Da Cruz, or even the Voodoo Rhythms label, which is a fantastic rockabilly which has spanned the world, all thanks to streaming, live gigs, a combination of both, and really, really clever marketing.
Now, certain groups and bands have also come up with the idea to basically release albums for free. Do you think this is the way to go? I'm thinking, for example, of the Swiss music group Lo and Le Duc.
Well, I mean, that certainly is a good idea. I mean, there's such a mass of music out there that it is really, really important to somehow make yourself be heard. Now, if this means that you give away your album or your single or whatever it is, your T-shirt, your shoes, so be it. And actually, for Radiohead, for instance, who pioneered this kind of thing, pay as much as you want for your album. It has proved extremely successful because half the people who ordered the album or downloaded or streamed the album for very little then couldn't resist the temptation to buy the special box set edition with extra vinyl and books, etc. and so forth. It's an extremely effective way of attracting interest, I think. It's one of many ways of attracting interest.
But records for free, does this actually mean that we don't appreciate music anymore and that music is becoming too cheap? What does this actually do with the consumers?
Well, this mentality that all creative content should be free, not just music, but journalism, books, videos, whatever. I don't know how harmful it is now. I mean, it looked really bad 10 years ago. But when I look back even further, like 30, 40 years ago, when I got interested in music, obviously with my pocket money, I couldn't get very far. So I taped all my friends' records, and at the time there was a campaign saying home taping kills music. Well, it hasn't killed music. In fact, a lot of people get really interested through being able to have access to music for free in a certain way. I mean, I'm not talking about whole countries wholesale in an industrial way pirating music. That is not the phenomenon we're talking about here. But what I think is a much more dangerous phenomenon and devalues music is that we get music from everywhere. Every shoe shop we hear music, every ski lift we hear music. We can't walk down the road without having music blared at us. It's on television when they repeat the goal in football. It's got to have music behind it. Okay, it brings money to the musicians whose copyright it is, but to be so blared full of music every day, I think that takes a sense of music being something special.
It's really almost like a music overdose. Right. Now, since the year 2000, Hans-Peter, we have seen that profits from the sales of CDs, vinyl and tapes have dropped sharply, but the digital sector has been growing exponentially since 2005. Now, from your perspective, what's coming next after this digital wave? What's the future like?
Well, I wish I could read the Kaffeesatz, as they say in Swiss German. I haven't got a glass bowl to look in the future, but I mean, I'm sure there's another format just around the corner that hardware companies and software developers are working on very hard at the moment to make us buy all the old stuff again in a new formats. But I mean, personally, I'm really happy for the vinyl revival, and I observe in my environment here in London, particularly young people. I just chatted to a 17-year-old a couple of days ago who just got a record player for his Christmas. And I think this idea that music should have a solid form, a case to be in, is a very positive sign. And in contrast to what's been said before, I'm not sure it's actually plateaued. I think it will rise interest in vinyl still.
Music never dies. Now, before we go, Hans-Peter, some of the most famous Swiss musicians are DJ Antoine, Seven, DJ Bobo, Zürich West or Patent Ochsner. Which kind of music do you think is the most promising for success going forward? Is it, the DJing art? Is it hip-hop? And are Swiss artists actually up to speed?
Well, I don't think it matters what genre it is. What counts in music internationally is originality and or whether the music matters to the environment where it is being created. So, okay, you could, well, those names that you mentioned, none of them is in any way well known in Britain, I'd say, apart from maybe DJ Bobo slightly in certain disco circles. But Patent Ochsner and Zürich West, they're very Swiss bands. They reacted to their environment, did something very fine, but they're not making music that's original. You can measure success in two ways. Either it's just making loads of money, and those people obviously have made loads of money, so good luck to them. But in terms of international respect and, bringing something to music, creativity, it's actually now all the niche artists that are truly successful and have a chance to break out of Switzerland. I'm thinking of people who do a really original thing in their field. I'm thinking of Nick Bertsch's Ronin, who are traveling the world with their music and their concepts. I'm thinking of Sophie Hunger, again, the Voodoo Rhythm Acts, all those, the free improvisers, the jazz people of Switzerland, Intact Records in Zurich, the modern composers, all those in a global way, they have really thriven in the last 20 years or so. They've found a way to live with the modern technology and have success on their own terms.
Thank you very much for your great insight, Hans-Peter, and keep enjoying the music and join us again in the future. Thank you very much. Over to our international desk now, and investigators in Russia are scouring a 1-kilometer-wide debris field where a plane crashed, killing all 71 people on board. The Kremlin has issued a statement saying it wants a full investigation on what happened, and President Putin has issued a statement through his spokesperson. Now, CNN senior international correspondent Matthew Chance has more from Domodedovo airport in Russia.
Well, I think I landed here at the airport in Moscow at about the same time that this Antonov 148 aircraft must have crashed about 50 kilometers away from the Russian capital. And before we landed at Domodedovo airport, we had to circle on a number of occasions, a number of times around the airport. The pilot came across the tannoy and said it was because there was very heavy snowstorms in the area, and we had to wait for the tarmac and the runway to be cleared. Now, it's not clear whether weather was a factor in the crash of this Antonov 148, but it's certainly something investigators here, crash investigators, say they're looking at. And of course, over the past couple of weeks, Moscow has experienced some of its most intensive snowfall for many decades, and that's quite something given that it's the winter here and Moscow is well used to heavy snowfall. It's never been as heavy as this, not in several decades, and so that could well have been a factor. But of course there are other factors as well. The Kremlin has issued a statement saying, look, we want a full investigation into exactly what happened. He instructed all his various departments. President Putin is issuing a statement through his spokesman to get to the bottom of this. In a political year, an election year, it's important that Vladimir Putin is seen to be doing everything possible to get to the bottom of this. And of course, President Putin has offered his condolences as well to the friends and the family of the 71 people who were on board that Russian-built aircraft and who died and who lost their lives. And so, the Kremlin is offering his condolences, promising an investigation. The black boxes, or at least one of them, have been recovered. And so we're waiting now for some clarity from the crash investigators to establish what it was that led to the crash of this Antonov 148 airliner. Matthew Chance, CNN, at Domodedovo Airport in Moscow.
To another topic now. Social media is well known to be an effective way to communicate. So how are Switzerland's CEOs doing when it comes to reaching out? Well, a new report is very encouraging. Compared to their colleagues in Austria or Germany, they are in the lead. 10 of all 19 CEOs of companies listed on the SMI are active on social media. The former CEO, Joseph Jimenez of Novartis, leads the pack with 206,000 followers on LinkedIn, while with 149,000, UBS CEO Sergio Ermotti is second. Alain Dehaze of Adecco ranks third with 31,000 followers. And our next guest is Joris Dinka, CEO of Switzerland, from the consulting firm Oliver Wyman, which produced this study. So, Joris, first of all, what do you make of these results?
Well, we're supporting companies in digital transformation and obviously changing the business design, the organization to make it digital is very important. But at the end, the whole communication part and the culture part is extremely important. So we will use these results in order to see how we can support those companies in better communicating and, for example, improving their employer branding.
Digital is the key word. Now, for Swiss companies, are they catching up with digitalization? Are they really fast enough?
Well, compared to other markets, I think yes. And you can see it from also from initiatives like Digital Switzerland that they're taking it very seriously and are advancing very quickly and very fastly on this digital innovation path. And we're seeing a lot of innovation happening actually in Switzerland in the digital space.
Now, I saw there was a difference between the results of CEOs and board members. Tell me about it.
Well, first of all, the CEOs are very present on social media, with over 50% of them having at least one social media channel where they are very active. If you look at the board, the management board of those companies, then the other board members, the other functions are even more active than the CEOs. And it's speaking with, for example, the heads of HR or talent management, which are actually with over 70% active on social media.
Now, we have seen that LinkedIn is one of the most popular platforms among CEOs. Would you advise that executives in Switzerland use this as the main platform, or maybe also Twitter, Facebook? What is your suggestion here?
I think Facebook is actually what we're seeing more for private networks. I think LinkedIn, Twitter, Xing, which is very popular in German-speaking Europe, are all very good channels in order to give real-time information and build up what we call the digital face towards the market.
One aspect of the study that really struck me was that female board members are incredibly active on social media. What's the reason for that?
Yeah, good question. So we shouldn't be exaggerating in interpretation of these results. We just have 14 female board members, but actually what we think is that the position and the function they're taking, for example, HR is playing obviously a role, and maybe also just the age structure, which on the female side is much younger than on the male side.
And how important is it actually for executives and board members to use social media actively?
So for employer branding, it's, I think, extremely important. The generation Y and Z are taking their information not from the classical media, but from social media. So if you want to build up a younger image and broaden up your audience, I don't think there's another way than to be present on social media. So it's actually the future.
A lot of companies in Switzerland also use the social media platforms to recruit new talents. How efficient is it actually to recruit and to attract, HR, human resources?
I think, even companies like we are taking social media very, very serious. I would say 50% of the people, of the potential recruits and talents are getting their information from social media. So you can influence your talent market.
Thank you very much, Joris. That's all we have time for tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And now let's take a look at the world of Hollywood. Lots of movie news today, from awards to box office grosses and even to lawsuits. CNN's David Daniel sorts it all out in the Hollywood Minute.
The $500 million sale of the Weinstein Company has hit a snag. New York's Attorney General has sued the company and founders Harvey and Bob Weinstein, alleging they violated state civil rights, human rights, and business laws. That could delay or even threaten a proposed sale of the company to a group that says it intends to install a female majority board.
You saying what I think you're saying?
A win with Oscar implications for Call Me By Your Name. The acclaimed film has won the University of Southern California's Scripter Award for Film, which honors both the authors of source material and the screenwriters who adapt their work. For Call Me By Your Name, that's novelist Andre Osman and screenwriter James Ivory. Last year's winner, Moonlight, went on to win the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
How big is Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle? The adventure's $881 million global gross makes it Sony's third biggest worldwide release ever, behind Skyfall and Spider-Man 3. And it's not done. The movie is still in the North American top 5 and has yet to debut in Japan. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that's it for this edition of The Big Picture. Up next is the Newsmaker, and we have Mathieu Chadon. He's the manager of the Montreux Jazz Festival. I can't wait for summer to come and go there. Have a great evening, everybody.
CNN Money Switzerland Business Weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia, and now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNNMoney Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want. Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere, and so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
I'm seeing Shanghai the old-fashioned way. CNN Business Traveler in China. By the end of the next decade, the largest aviation market in the world. Are you ready for that? Businesses are spreading their wings. China Eastern, keeping the Chinese skies safe. New ways to earn miles. Are you still a mileage geek? Yes, always. And bridging culture gaps. Don't ask. On the next CNN Business Traveler.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
In the Newsmaker tonight, we'll have the head of one of Switzerland's most prestigious music events. Matteo Jaton, the manager of the Montreux Jazz Festival, tells us that the success of the festival is all down to satisfying the artist.
How to welcome people, how to let the artists be free of doing whatever they want and giving them a lot of comfort to relax. They will provide them the chance to give a beautiful concert because they just feel relaxed and comfortable, and that's my goal every day.
And as stocks rebound globally, at least for now, we ask what or who is to blame for recent market turbulence. Does algorithmic trading turn normal events into extreme ones? And what's the human factor in the trading world today, if any? Good evening, I'm Amanda Kane, and you're watching The Newsmaker. You're watching the Newsmaker Hour here on the Swiss Pulse. Let's catch up with some news from around the world. As Bitcoin rises again above $9,000, a warning comes from regulators that cryptocurrencies are highly risky assets and are unsuitable as investments. 3 EU regulators warned on Monday. The European supervisory authorities for securities, banking, insurance and pensions said in a joint statement that they were concerned about an increasing number of people buying virtual currencies without being aware of the risks involved. Swiss pharma giant Novartis is facing corruption charges in Greece. 2 former prime ministers, the central bank governor and an EU commissioner for home affairs are among those named in a leaked government report. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras vows to claim back billions of euros from Novartis, calling on the Greek parliament to investigate bribes allegedly paid to prominent politicians. In a statement, Novartis claims to be aware of the reports but declined to comment further. The Basel-based company said the reports appear to be driven by a leak of parts of a confidential and preliminary investigation. Switzerland's Federal Office of Justice confirmed last week it's received 2 requests for legal assistance from Greece and the US. The head of Swiss Post, Suzanne Ruff, has refused to step down for mistakes she admits were made by Postbus subsidiary company. Ruff, who's been CEO since 2012, says she only discovered last November that payment transfers carried out by the bus company, which is financed by public funds, were in fact illegal. And an audit showed that Postbus intentionally kept profits low in order to receive more government subsidies in excess of nearly 80 million Swiss francs. The Post CEO has promised to carry out a thorough investigation. Both Postbus director and chief finance officer were dismissed, and Postbus must now refund the money. US President Donald Trump finally unveiled his long-awaited infrastructure plan on Monday. The White House says the plan would be to spend $1.5 trillion for repairing and upgrading America's infrastructure. However, only $200 billion of that would come from direct federal spending. The rest would come from state and local governments, which are expected to match any federal allocation by at least a 4-to-1 ratio. Now stay with us. After the break, we reveal why Swissness is key to the success of one of the world's most iconic music events. Mathieu Jaton explains to us the magic behind the Montreux Jazz Festival. Coming up later, don't go away.
So I think this brand is really emotional, and it's really, it's a Swiss brand. It's the Swiss way of doing things, and both Switzerland is helping the festival, and that festival is helping Switzerland. It's going on both ways. When we have the Montreux Jazz Festival in Japan, of course, Switzerland Tourism is going with us, or a Swiss company is also coming with us, and it's like a win-win situation.
It's one of the biggest dates in the global music calendar. Every year, 250,000 people descend on the small town of Montreux in Switzerland for a unique music experience. And this year promises to be no different. For the 52nd year, preparations are underway to host the hottest acts and a star-studded lineup. Ahead of announcements in April, we're speaking to Mathieu Jaton, the man who makes it all come together. And while he's giving nothing away, tonight he explains to Hannah Wise that there will be a distinct feel to this year's lineup. The interview starts with a reminder of some of the sights and sounds of last year's event.
This is going to be the 52nd, if I'm not mistaken. What is going to make this one the best year ever? Everyone always says the next one's going to be the best year ever. What's going to make this one the best year ever?
Yeah, you're right. Every year is the best one. No, but every year we're trying to work, of course, with the kind of artists that are touring, because we need to know who is touring and build a program with the artist on tour with a new album, etc. But I can say that this 2018 edition will be really rock moods, and there is a lot of artists that I was dreaming for years that will come to the festival. Some will come back, and some other will come for the first time.
So can you give us any names today?
No, not yet.
Not even a little hint? Or was that enough of a hint? That it's going to be very rock-driven?
No, that would be rock. I mean, for the Stravinsky Hall, because as you know, we have 3 different halls. The Stravinsky, which is the biggest one, 4,000 capacities, really like the big boat. And that would be quite rock, but also with a mix with, I mean, of course, jazz, soul, blues. But the major red line will be rock, and it will be like the history of rock, coming with some very old guys in the rock and roll business, some who wrote some of the sentence of the history of Montreux, guess who, and some other in the new generation of rock.
And already you're announcing Elton John, though, for 2019.
Exactly.
So we're talking, artists of that kind of caliber.
Yeah. I mean, Elton John is really, really one of the biggest artists on the planet. It's like when we had Stevie Wonder or Prince or David Bowie. So, and Elton John was really a dream for me for years. And I was so proud, so honored that Montreux has been chosen to be the 2 dates in Switzerland for the last tour, farewell tour of Elton John ever. I was at the press conference in London when he did the press conference London, New York, and LA together. And it was really emotional for me because when we all know that Montreux has a big recognition, brand recognition, but our hall is really small. As I mentioned, it's only 4,000 capacity. And when you have a big star, a legendary star like Elton John, choosing Montreux to do one of the 2 last dates of the tour, you feel honored and you say, okay, we did something great. That's I hope that he will feel happy to come to Montreux and enjoy really Montreux as all the other artists are doing.
So he very much picked Montreux then?
We don't know exactly how it happened, but we tried many years to have Elton John coming to Montreux. And this year, thanks to the good relation also we have with the agents that we are working with since years, he called us and then that could happen this time. This is the farewell tour. So we've made an offer. We sent some dates and then it worked. And when you received such a confirmation, you're just in front of your computer, you say, oh my goodness, I got it.
How do you go about picking some of the other artists then? Do they approach you or do you approach them? How does it work?
It depends. Most of the time, we are approached or we are in discussion with the agents in London or all around the world to know who is touring, because it really depends on who gets some new album and who is decided to tour in Europe during our periods. So then we had some talk, we're making some offers, we're giving some dates. We have a long festival, so it's not only a 3 days, it's 16 days festival long. So it's quite difficult sometimes to give the good date, to fill in a good schedule. And then the agent and the management, they are fixing the tour of the artists. And when it works, when our offer and our dates works within the tour, then we have the confirmation. It's a little bit like a poker game.
And for our viewers who have never been, what can they expect? What's the vibe like?
The vibe of Montreux, I have to say, is very special. It's very special because, first, this is a big festival in a very small city. Montreux is only 20,000 inhabitants, and during the festival we have 250,000 visitors. So it's like the festival becomes the city for 2 weeks. And the setting is beautiful because you're in the middle of the mountain and the lake. The story of Montreux is amazing because all the big guys lived in Montreux, like David Bowie, like Freddie Mercury, Deep Purple recorded at Montreux, but also all the classical music, like Stravinsky, Ravel, Tchaikovsky, they stayed in Montreux and they wrote in Montreux. So I think that you have the impression, being in Montreux, that you have like all the England impression, like the river, Swiss Riviera. And you have a very specific feeling. So when you're talking to the artists, they have this impression. And for me, I'm running the festival like a hotel business. I'm coming from the hotel business as Claude Knops was in the past. And how to welcome people, how to let the artists be free of doing whatever they want and giving them a lot of comfort to relax, they will provide them the chance to give a beautiful concert because they just feel relaxed and comfortable, and that's my goal every day.
And do you think that what you offer artists is part of the draw for them? I've heard some stories about what some of the artists, kind of get up to and the kind of things that you provide artists. Is it just, anything they need while they're there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's very important to understand the artist, to be in the shoes of the artist, because they are touring a lot, they're doing a lot of things. So I really want, when they're coming to Montreux, they feel free and they feel really comfortable. So of course we have writers with some expectation. A lot of people are saying that it's like caprice from the artist. This is not. It's just like they need something to feel comfortable.
Strawberries at 3 a.m., for example.
I mean, yeah, but it's cool to do that. It's like a hotel concierge, and I love to do that. And Montreux is really to go far away from the expectation, and also to really to feel where the artist is in his career, what he likes, and if we can bring something special, if we can bring a little surprise, or if we can just reach an expectation from him or dream.
So give me an example, perhaps.
I mean, there is a lot of example I can say, but it's really to...
you don't have to name names,
no.
of course.
It's difficult without giving names, but I mean, we had so many artists at the festival, and it could be a car, it could be a watch, it could be just a drink, it could be just how to treat the artist, what kind of rooms you are providing them, what kind of transportation you are providing them, if it's easier to take the train, the car or the plane, or private jets. It's a lot of different things. I'm not talking about luxury. I'm not talking about giving or buying the artist by giving a big gift. That's not the goal. It's really to touch them in the heart, because it's something that makes sense for them. So it could be a book. It could be just like providing them some of the content of Montreux that has been recorded 40 years ago, because it was an artist they were listening to. So I'm always reading all the interviews of the artists. They say, oh, this guy, he loves Aretha Franklin, so maybe I can give something from Aretha Franklin in Montreux. Or I heard that Nina Simone was a big inspiration, so maybe I will give her or give him a little gift about Nina Simone in Montreux, or poster, or whatever.
Is that part of the Swiss hospitality, do you think? Is that special to Switzerland?
Hopefully for Switzerland. And I think this is something, as I'm coming from the hotel business and from the hotel business in Lausanne, which is a famous school for the hotel business, it's what I've been teached to. It's not only to give a good service or to welcome people well, but it's really to feel what the client or the artist in my case is looking for. But I'm a lot of talking about the artist, but for me the other stakeholders are also important. My partners, the public. I'm really trying to think to the public and to the artist the same way. That for the public it should be a tremendous experience. For the artist it should be a tremendous experience. And if both of them have a tremendous experience, then the souvenir of Montreux will be just a dream. It's not my festival, it's their festival. I mean, the stage of Montreux is not the stage of Montreux Jazz Festival, it's the stage of the artist. The hall is the hall for the public. It's not mine. And I think this is a very important starting point. And I'm doing this job because I want to make people happy. I'm not doing this job for my own ego. And to come to the media and say, I get this guy, and this guy. What makes me the most happy, and when I'm out of the concert, when the concert is over and people are crying or smiling, then I go back home and say, okay, I did my job well.
Now, Montreux obviously started as a jazz festival, but it's kind of broadened its reach over the years. How have you managed that?
It's really part of the DNA of the festival since the early beginning, and there was a big fight also in the early 70s when Claude Nobs for the first time brought Latino music and then hip-hop music in the 80s with Quincy Jones, and everybody was talking about it's not a jazz festival anymore. It just depends on how you pursue the jazz style. For us, jazz is really a way of life, it's the spirit of music. From the real DNA of jazz music. At the very beginning, it was how to share music, how to improvise music with your friends. It was not just like formatted style of music. And for us, is blues, is soul, is hip hop, is all those kind of style of music because it's how the music is. The music is a bridge to the world, is the bridge to the culture.
And what's the special, I guess, fascination with Brazilian music? Because that really has become part of this festival. Why is that?
I think first it was a passion for Claude, for Brazilian music, and also a very beautiful relationship he had with one amazing guy in Brazil, responsible for Warner Music Brazil, Andre Midani, was a very close friend of Claude. And they brought for the first time Brazilian musician to Montreux. And very quickly, Montreux became the entrance door for Brazilian artists to Europe. So it becomes like a tradition of the Brazilian artists to come to Montreux first, then to play in the entire Europe. So we kept this spirit of mixing all kind of music, Latino, but now electronic music, and then hip-hop music, and then African music, Asian music. We also have a lot of connection with Japan. We have a Montreux Jazz Festival in Japan since years, and a long connection with a Japanese community and Japanese artists. So I think this is how Montreux is working, also curious to the words, open to the word. We're not just like squeezed in our little wall of Montreux, but we just open to the word, and that's for me what is making the beauty of Montreux.
And Montreux itself has become a brand. You've just said it yourself. It's hugely popular in Japan. It's a way to bring artists from around the world, first to Switzerland, but also into Europe. I mean, what's the relationship? How powerful is that brand?
Oh, wow, how is difficult, but how it came out, it started very early because Claude Nobs had a tremendous idea at the very beginning. It was to record any single minute of the music in Montreux on the highest standard ever. So it sounds easy to say so now in 2018, but when you're back in 1967 recording the festival with big cameras and sound, that was something quite unique. But his goal was mainly that the artists could leave Montreux with an amazing recording of their performance in Montreux. And that was very unique at that time. So very early, the artists started to release their live album of Montreux. Bill Evans, Dizzy Gillespie, all those guys, they started to release LPs that become very famous in the United States, very famous on television in Japan, or all around the world. And Claude Nobs was starting like a brand development without knowing he was doing that or naming that like that. But his goal at the very beginning was he was working for the tourism office. So his goal was to make the brand Montreux known all around the world. So he made it quite well.
Is that quite a lucrative side to your business then? Having artists film their performances, it goes on YouTube, it could go viral. Do you get a lot back from that?
Not money-wise. It's not lucrative. On brand development, on brand recognition is very important. But you have to know that when we started to broadcast the festival, and especially in 1991 when we started to broadcast the festival in HD for the first time ever, we have 20 years in H definition before the H definition is on our television, which were, a little bit irrational to do that commercially or financially. But Claude did that. And so we invest a lot of money in that, not for having a return investment, because we all know that we are only the producer of the image. We're not the right owner. The rights becomes to the artist, to the management, or to the labels.
But you do it to protect the brand.
Exactly, to protect the brand, but also very important, that was the most important thing for Claude, to protect the history of music. So actually the archives of Montreux, which is the biggest archives of video recorded live, is 10,000 hours of music recorded live, which has been recognized by UNESCO as memory of the words. So the first goal to have like a piece of history, and we have it. And that was also very important when artists like Marvin Gaye was coming to the festival in the 80s, and normally Marvin Gaye refusing to be broadcasted. But when he saw the images of Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, and all those big guys, and look at the videos, he was up in the Claude Chalet and looking at the concert, he say, wow, that's so nice, who did that? And Claude answers, the team waiting for you. And then he accepted to be recorded and filmed. And that's one of the unique performances of Marvin Gaye in Montreux 1980.
How Swiss do you think the Montreux brand is? When people think of the jazz festival, do people think of Switzerland? Or perhaps when people think of Switzerland, do they think of you?
Hopefully. No, I think it's right in a way. I'm too humble to say so. But I made the experience various times going around the world and being in a very small city or traveling, and where are you coming from? Switzerland, but where? Montreux. Oh, Montreux Jazz Festival. I was in Mauritius and going on a boat, and someone is wearing a Montreux t-shirt. So I think this brand is really emotional, and it's really, I mean, it's a Swiss brand. It's the Swiss way of doing things, and both. Switzerland is helping the festival, and the festival is helping Switzerland. It's going on both ways. When we have the Montreux Jazz Festival in Japan, of course, Switzerland Tourism is going with us, or a Swiss company is also coming with us. And it's like a win-win situation.
Coming up after the break, the cold and wind are causing disruptions at the Olympics, but nothing is standing in the way of Swiss medal hopes in curling. We'll have the latest Olympics news with Matt Layton after the break.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNNMoney Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have. It's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour!
Only from CNNMoney Switzerland.
I've spent all of my career in the field, and I think that informs who I want to talk to, but more importantly, who wants to and who accepts to talk to me. And I hope that what I bring to the table is a rigorous search for the truth and a rigorous determination and an effort to hold power accountable.
Amanpour.
The Swiss Pulse delivers you the most important global and Swiss business and financial news, connecting Switzerland to the world. Tune in every weekday from 6 p.m. or find us on the go on our website or social media platforms.
For somebody to tell you their story.
Good to have you here with us on the Swiss Pulse. We're live across Switzerland until 9 p.m. Now, earlier I spoke to sports correspondent Matt Layton about the latest in Olympics news. I began by asking him about the weather conditions and why some athletes are coping better than others.
It's the cream is rising to the top. So the top athletes are winning the events. So sort of answering your question, it's incredibly difficult. It's very cold. There's a very strong wind and it's not consistent. Say, for example, we had the women's slope-style snowboard. You go down some rails, then you go over 3 big jumps. The first 8 competitors in that today, they fell over because the winds were coming from behind and they'd stop them. They'd go around, so it's very dangerous. However, the actual winners, Jamie Anderson from America, she won in Sochi. The second place is a world champion. The third place was a second in Sochi. So it is incredibly difficult, but what the experienced athletes are saying is it's difficult, but you don't do your amazing trick, you do your steady trick. And perhaps that's where experience comes into it. But clearly, as we saw on the report a minute ago, the women's giant slalom was cancelled, and we saw some images before where it's ridiculous. You couldn't even stand up. So you have to look at television rights, you have to look at all sorts of issues. The way it actually works for an event is the technical delegate of the federation involved is the person responsible for making the decision. Him or she, they actually go and look at the conditions, clearly lots of experience, then they speak to the IOC, they speak to the management of the federation, they speak to the broadcasters, but it's the actual delegate who makes the decision. And so far, maybe the fact that it was a snowboard event and not the men's downhill, it was cancelled. So far we have the men's downhill on Thursday and we have the women's giant slalom on Thursday. In the winter sports, there are 2 or 3 days always set aside. Historically, they've often had to use them.
Sounds like they are using them. But the curling team, it's a mixed team from Switzerland, sure to pick up a medal tomorrow, and it will be the first Swiss medal. I'm not hearing of any others so far.
So far, there's been 54 medals given out in 18 different disciplines, and Switzerland hasn't done anything. Switzerland's not doing badly, and they're not really expected to do that much in the early days. Dario Colonia, he was 6th. Last time he won a gold medal. Natalie von Siebelten, she was 6th. And we just had today Benjamin Vega in the biathlon, he was 6th. So they're doing okay, but not really where they should be going. But yeah, it's an interesting situation, this, with the mixed curling. It's the first time ever in the Olympics. If you watch one event, you watch the final mixed curling tomorrow. I'll tell you why. Jenny Perret and Martin Rios from Switzerland, they used to go out together. They're not anymore. The reason it's interesting is they're having domestics, actually, during the competition. You could see them today, and she was going, "No, you silly thing, you push harder." And he was saying, "Just shut up and let me get on with it." And it's absolutely fascinating. Today, they came through against Russia. In the last end, they managed to do just amazing things. Yesterday, they beat... they're winning most of their matches, but tomorrow, it's against Canada. Canada, in the round-robin events, they beat Switzerland 7-2. Canada have an 80% success rate. If you want to put the stone there, 8 out of 10 they do it. Switzerland have a 71% success rate. So Canada are the favourites, but Switzerland are world champions, and Switzerland 5 times in the last 6 Olympic Games, when there's been a new event, they've won a gold.
I'm glad we can rely on you to bring us the gossip from the Games.
Absolutely.
But just lastly, I mean, South Korea's, 8 hours ahead of Switzerland? Anything I should be setting my alarm clock in the middle of the night for to watch?
Sort of.
Not very convincing.
No, I'll tell you why. Is because they have planned to do the men's combined event, a downhill and a slalom. It's set for about 3 o'clock in the morning. So ideally, I'd say normally, yes, certainly do it. However, so far, the weather forecast is not great, and the downhill has already been cancelled. So that's, if it is on, maybe set for a second, watch it. The other events tomorrow, not really that much action involving Switzerland. Obviously, we've mentioned the mixed curling. There's going to be some cross-country sprinting event going on, and there's going to be, well, a couple, look at my notes here. There's a wrong page. I feel there's various other events going on. I say the cross-country, there's the women's snowboard, half-pipe going on, and there's some speed skating, and there's some short stack skating as well. So I think there's going to be 8 finals tomorrow. Switzerland are going to have a medal because in the mixed curling, it's the silver and gold match. In the rest, they probably just have to watch.
Still to come, Matteo Jaton from the Montreux Jazz Festival explains why working with the local people makes business sense when launching one of the biggest music events.
Without the support of the city, without the support of the inhabitants of Montreux, it would not be possible. Because again, we're investing the city for 2 weeks, and more than 2 weeks, because festival is 2 weeks, but setting up is like 2 weeks, and after it's like 1 or 2 weeks again, so it's more like 60 days. Where in Montreux, so the support of the city is very important because they are giving us the keys.
CNN Money Switzerland business weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNN Money Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
You're watching the Swiss Pulse in part 2 of our interview with our newsmaker, Matteo Jaton. He's the man behind the Montreux Jazz Festival. He tells us why the Swiss hospitality and good business sense are a recipe for success when it comes to the music industry. The interview begins with a musical flavour of last year's event.
Keep on, keep running. Running and running. Keep on, keep running.
Let's talk a bit about the business of the Jazz Festival. You sell your tickets, you have a budget, and I hear that the tickets actually sell out very, very quickly, just in a matter of hours. But do you have any kind of challenges financially?
Yes, we always have challenges because, I mean, the financial model of Montreux is a little bit bizarre. Because we're talking about the paying halls, which is only 1/3 of the festival, because the 2 other thirds is a free festival. So we have 12 free stages all around the cities. We have in total quite a big budget with 30 million Swiss francs. And we have to cover this budget with ticket sales, sponsoring, and F&B, food and beverage sales. In the past, the proportion of ticket sales was higher because, the fee of the artist was a little bit lower. Now it's going up and up and up, and the cost in general for the festival production also are going up and up. So I have to find new ways of bringing money into the festival to make that happen.
And I understand that ticket prices are actually kind of 5% cheaper than they were last year.
Yeah, it depends on the year and depends on the night. That's something quite specific for Montreux because with 16 days, and every single night in every single hall is a separate sale. It's not like an open air where you have like 30 concerts during one night and you're buying a ticket for this night and you have the chance to go in various stages. In Montreux, you're really selecting one concert, meaning that any single concert should have a highlight, should have a price, and should have a return on investment. Of course, you're always more clever after the festival than before, because sometimes you're just thinking that this concert would work and it doesn't work exactly how you're thinking, and the price you've put it was maybe too high or too low. It really depends.
So how do you, what are some of the ideas then if the artist prices are going up and the ticket prices are sometimes hovering or going down a little bit, what are some of the ideas that you're coming up with to kind of bridge that gap?
Not to increase the ticket prices, because we're trying to fix the right price. A lot of people are saying that Montreux is expensive. Of course, it's more expensive than an open air because you're in a very small hall. It's really intimate, so it get a different price. But I'm very conscious that I could not go upper, so I have to find new ideas. New technology, new innovation. So I've just created a community of fans of music in Montreux called Montreux Jazz Insider. And people can subscribe like a Spotify, an application for months, 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. And they will receive some very specific insider information. They can buy tickets before the others. They will be invited to very specific events or meet and greet with the artist, and all year long. And that's very interesting. So we started that last year, and it's a new way also of bringing fans and bringing also a recognition for our visitors, and it works quite well.
How does it work with sponsorship then?
Sponsorship is a big challenge. Actually, it's 25 to 26% covering the budget. In Switzerland, it's always the case. In some of the countries, sponsoring could be like 50 or 100%. There are some countries where you're not doing a festival if you're not 100% covered by the sponsors. It's not the case in Switzerland because we have ticket revenues and we have F&B revenues. But it's still a big challenge. But I have to say that I'm a happy guy with the sponsors because I have a lot of friends and sponsors supporting the festival since years with Montreux. But every year also we have to bring something new. So for me it's very important that the sponsoring is not like a regular sponsoring. You give money, I put a logo. It's really that the sponsors should create an added value for the audience and for the artist. So we're putting a lot of effort and we're working a lot with our partners to create something different, to create something new, innovative, creative, and certainly that bring an added value for the audience.
Some of your sponsors include Socar, Diageo, for example. I mean, is that a good fit for you, given the kind of vibe of the festival, to have kind of an oil company involvement?
Yeah, it's more than an oil company. It's the cultural relationship we have with Azerbaijan for years. So we started 10 years ago to work with the Azeri artist, Azeri embassy in Switzerland, to bring those talents, because the Azeri jazz scene is very important. And also it's a way for us to be in the middle of Middle East, and to bring some different artists to know this culture. And as I mentioned before, for me, music is a bridge in between the different culture and the different region. No politics, no religion, just music. So having a company like Socar is also helping us to make this bridge with the country. Diageo is different also because, in Switzerland we have the rights to have a partnership with alcohols and still a little bit with cigarettes. We have to be very careful with that. The social aspect of that should be well managed. But those companies are doing really well. Again, it's not to force the young audience to drink or to smoke, not at all. It's really to bring them, another experience or even a better responsibility. I have sometimes the strategy that it's better to have a company and to explain to the young audience how this works than to avoid and to give the impression that no, I'm touching at that. It happens. Young audience is drinking, young audience is smoking. And my responsibility and the responsibility of the festival is also, of course, you have partners in the festival doing that, but the biggest responsibility is to explain and to put the rules. And when you're doing that, and when you're smart with the audience, you're clear with the audience, then the target is not to making money, but to give an experience, then it brings another view of that.
Keep on, keep running. Can't seem to get away. You can lose everything you know, but they won't take that love away.
Something that's completely out of your control is, of course, the weather. How does that affect the success of the festival?
I don't have a sponsoring contract with the weather. I would love so. I mean, it affects quite a lot because, as I mentioned, 150,000 visitors are coming outside for the free venues on the gardens, on the lake, on the terraces. We're doing 25% of our revenues on F&B. So when it's raining on on a Monday or Tuesday evening, it's quite tough. So. You can make a balance that if we have a sunny festival or a raining festival, it could be like a difference of 20 to 30% on our F&B revenue. Could be like 1 million, 1.5 million difference, which is big.
And of course, if it's raining on a Monday, all the local businesses also kind of miss out on the huge numbers of people that descend on the town. How much does Montreux actually rely on the festival?
We've made a lot of survey to know exactly how Montreux Jazz Festival is helping the region. Actually, the last survey was that Montreux is generating like 60 million direct revenue to the region with 60,000 nights in different hotels in the region, which is a lot. So of course, if it's raining, of course, Montreux Jazz Festival is not attracting as so many people they are normally doing. Then it affects also the restaurants, the hotels, and the business. But it can be also affected because our choice in the program or the kind of audience we're attracting is not staying in hotels, for example. Mm-hmm. So I have my view of how to driving the festival should not be driven by those kind of things. So my first goal is the artistic point. But sometimes I have to be realistic and say, okay, we brought this artist, the concert was tremendous, but the other effects was not as high as we were expecting. But that's not a problem. We're still doing the artistic project first. Even we're doing first the artistic project before doing a budget. So
the art comes first, always? Always. Music first, always. And do you work well with the town? I mean, there's obviously 250,000 people descending on a small town for 2 weeks. There's a lot of clear-up, there's a lot of involvement. Do you work together to make sure that this is as seamless and as passable as possible for local people?
We have to. I mean, it's without the support of the city, without the support of the inhabitants of Montreux, it would not be possible. Because again, we're investing the city for 2 weeks, and more than 2 weeks, because festival is 2 weeks, but setting up is like 2 weeks, and after it's like 1 or 2 weeks again. So it's more like 60 days. Where in Montreux, so the support of the city is very important because they are giving us the keys in a way. So police, transportation, trains.
Local jobs as well for young people?
We have 2,500 staff coming to the festival, working for 16 days. So it's the social responsibility of Montreux is important. So we have a social responsibility, we have a cultural responsibility, we have an economic responsibility, and of course we have a cultural responsibility. And all that together makes Montreux. But again, music first, and as best the music is, as happy as the audience is, everything works well.
So we know why the artists want to come. Tell me why the fans come. Is it just the music?
I think so, yes. I think so because, I mean, the lineup is really the priority because, again, we're not an open air. So you're not buying a ticket to get in an arena or, on a big open air where you have various concerts and you're coming to like an entertaining experience, even if you're choosing this night or this night and this night because there is a lineup you like. In Montreux, you really buy a ticket for the artist you like. So if there is not the artist you want, the fan will not come. So for me, it's really another challenge, is to reach the good audience, the good mix, and to reach the expectation, because also a lot of people are saying, but why do you don't have this guy and this guy and this guy? Why don't you invite you two? Well, okay. Yes, trying so. Maybe once it will happen, hopefully. But we're not choosing all the time, but my role is really to make a good balance in between the fan expectation, the opportunity I have, and the music experience I can bring to the fans.
And I'm going to ask you one more time, is there any names that you can give us for 2018? Go on.
No. No, you know why? Because, we have a major press conference in April 17, and for me it's very important to launch all the names together, because big names will support also younger names. I mean, for me, a new talent is as important as a big name. And if I'm starting to just give some names like that, it doesn't give the impression to be like a full festival, a full experience. So I rather prefer to give all the names together.
But we're not going to be disappointed.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay, Mathieu Jaffon, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
What or who is to blame for recent market turbulence? Answers to come in our Living Markets interview after the break, so stay where you are.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movement and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
Spotlight, CNN Money Switzerland's program dedicated to lifestyle, celebrity, entertainment and culture. We bring you a snapshot of the latest trends in Switzerland and around the world, from Hollywood to design, big names and rising stars, to art collectors and architects. It's right here under the spotlight.
Spotlight with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland. CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV or on the go through our website, cnnmoney.ch, or through your favorite social media. The best Swiss business news, whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
You make sure you're feeling good. We'll be focusing on all the tools available to us today to make sure we're physically and mentally healthy. From monitoring and avoiding disease to reactive and preventative healthcare. In particular, we'll be delving into the latest innovation coming out of Switzerland to ensure a long and healthy life.
Feeling Good with Amanda Kane on CNN Money Switzerland.
Since the founding of the Red Cross in 1863, the city of Geneva has a long tradition of hosting international organizations. In our program, International Geneva, we'll be exploring issues of international cooperation, humanitarian assistance and human rights, and talk to international players about the challenges and solutions